Indian Standard Time. As we had announced earlier, today we are back on this show with Rajiv Malhotra from the United States and Dr. Subramanian Swamy from Delhi. You know both our speakers today. So without much introduction, I will start the program. Today we are going to be discussing on the Indian economy, pre-COVID, post-COVID, and the world scenario. So I would start Rajiv Malhotra ji to start the discussion with Dr. Swamy and take it forward. Welcome Raju ji and Dr. Swamy.
Thank you.
Namaste, Dr. Swamy, namaste, Jagdish ji, and all our viewers around the world. It's always a delight to have an open discussion with Dr. Swamy. So, Dr. Swamy, we are at the crossroads with the COVID-19, but we should not forget the challenges that India had already.
Yes.
So, I would like to divide this discussion into two parts. The first part is, before there was any COVID-19, what was the situation in India? What were the challenges? What was going on? Because, that hasn't gone away. Those realities are still there. Yes. And then in the second part, I want to discuss how the COVID-19 makes it even more complex. And then, of course, we'll discuss how do we get out of all this.
Yes.
So starting with the first part, what was, in the last few years, India's macroeconomic situation as a country and different states? What was going on in your opinion?
Well, thanks. I think that's the right perspective we should have in this, because two issues should not get mixed up. What I would say is that I would like to see the span of the last 10 years. And you know that in 2008, there was this subprime crisis in the United States, and then it spread to other parts of the world through the financial system. At that time, in 2008, towards the end of 2008, there was a change in the finance ministry of the UPA government. So Chidambaram went off to Home Ministry, and Pranab Mukherjee, he came as finance minister. Now, Pranab Mukherjee and Manmohan Singh been colleagues for a long time, good friends. Both are economists. Manmohan Singh, of course, was a full professor, but Pranab Mukherjee was teaching at a college in Calcutta. And I knew them both at that time when they were in academics. And both together, and with the help of that time Mr. Reddy, who was the head of the RBI, they managed the impact of the subprime contagion, as it was called today at that time. Today we are calling it pandemic, but that time it was called contagion. And by 2012, there was again a change, and Mr. Chidambaram came back to finance. And you will see, if you look at the statistics, there's been a steady decline in the economy since then, because Raghuram Rajan was brought in as first in the finance ministry, and then later on as Reserve Bank governor. And he had this either deliberately or just was ignorant, because he was not really an economist per se, in the sense he got an engineering degree from IIT and then did management. And those who study finance and management, don't have a macroeconomic perspective. They have what is called as bilateral transactions. Most of their course material is on bilateral transactions. So Mr. Raghuram Rajan, he decided that he will jack up the interest rates, because from 2012 till 2014, when we came to power, the inflation began to gallop, and because the elections were due, so the Congress was putting pressure that something should be done. So he raised the interest rates, and he raised it to great heights. And given the corruption in our country, it was really difficult for anybody to get a decent loan for less than, say, 18% interest, although the prime lending rate was 12%. So that meant that as far as the small and medium industries were concerned, were totally dependent on bank financing. They found their cost of capital going up, and there was a very large closure of small and medium industries at that time, and the unemployment started galloping from that time onwards. When BJP came to power, Mr. Jaitley, who was even less trained in economics than Mr. Chidambaram, which is not saying much, but it's it's a bit of a measurement. And he more or less continued that. He continued with Raghuram Rajan. He surprisingly brought in as economic advisor a man called Arvind Subramanian, who just a year before, in 2013, had written a long op-ed in Business Standard in which he debunked Narendra Modi and said that he was absolutely mediocre person. All his claims in Gujarat were all bogus, and he had examined it in great detail. And so after this op-ed, it was very surprising that Mr. Narendra Modi would accept him in part of his at an important position in the government. And so, but he held on for 2-3 months, but then in the end he yielded and he became the economic advisor. Now, you must know that Mr. Arvind Subramanian actually works in an institute in Washington, which is called Patterson Institute, which is actually set up by drug companies. So he really, that company, that institute, Patterson Research Institute in Washington, produces a lot of research papers on drugs and expanding their markets abroad. And in 2013, again, Mr. Arvind Subramanian was called to the US Congress to depose on why India was taking such a protectionist stand on drugs coming from the United States. And it was on tape, which also I sent to Narendra Modi, on a tape recording which was made available to me. He said that you have to teach India a lesson. Only then they will wake up to the needs of the American pharmaceutical industry. And therefore, he said, take them and drag them to the WTO and give them hell there. These are his words, not mine. And that showed the kind of commitment he had for India. Because if he had any Indian sense, after all, you live in America, Mr. Malhotra, and everybody knows that you won't brook any such nonsense for what India, even though you live in the United States. And therefore, for him to do this showed exactly what he is. And he was made chief economic advisor. And these two, essentially what they did was, in terms of opening the floodgates for firms from the United States and other European countries to come, they kept on plugging these kinds of policies, including enhancement of taxes, bringing in this GST, which is a disastrous instrument. I mean, it's an instrument for disaster, because the complications are, on paper it looks very streamlined, but the fact is that the entire taxes were to be collected by the union government, whereas in the past only the direct taxes were collected by the union government. So these entire taxes were collected by the union government at the place of sale. And so the taxes which state governments were earning at the ex-factory stage had to be foregone, and they had to be compensated. So a complicated arithmetic was started on how first the collection will take place, then they will be deposited in a financial instrument which was called GSTN, N standing for network, which was owned by private bodies, principally the two banks which are foreign owned in terms of shareholding. One was the HDFC Bank, and the other was the ICICI Bank. These two and one or two other private companies together owned 51% of the shares, and the government had only 49%. And they were supposed to get all this money in their account. So the ICICI Bank and the HDFC Bank had deposits of over 7 lakh crore rupees in the very first year. And but they had no way of distributing it to the states according to these to their dues on the fact that the factory was in their state, even though it was sold in another state. And for that you needed a gigantic software program, and it was given to the Infosys, which said that they are not, they took the money, 4,000 crores, but they were unable to produce the software. And there has been chaos since then. They still haven't produced it. And now the government's own computer system, which they use for income tax, that has been deployed. So this was all, in my opinion, practically determined. It appeared almost as good as sabotage work of your system. And both of these people went around the country giving speeches on what a glorious invention it is, and so on. I was the only one in Parliament who voted against it, spoke against it. And of course, the usual abuse you get for betraying the party and so on. But in the end, the Prime Minister, after 1 year, nationalized the GSTN, accepting my stand that this should not be in private hands. Now, as today, that caused a great deal of problem. The second was the demonetization. Now, demonetization is not a bad thing. In fact, Morarji Desai had done it in 1978 and nothing happened to the country. Here, what happened is that the high currency notes of 1,000 and 500, they were demonetized. And then they did not have enough money, 100 rupee notes or new 500 rupee notes, which they were bringing, to be able to exchange what was with the people and was being traded in for new notes. And so long queues started, then black market started, and bank employees began taking a cut to get you delivered in exchange for your black money. And there was still utter chaos. And the thing is that in December, this announcement of demonetization was made on November 8th, 2016. And December middle, Shri Ravi Shankar contacted me saying that Prime Minister would welcome some suggestions on how we can now reduce these queues and make it more efficient. What would you suggest? And so I gave it in writing that what you do is, you say, don't go to a bank to change your notes. Go and deposit the money in your own bank account. And then the government will arrange to see that after taking away 20% of that money as taxes, because there are no questions asked, and allowing you to draw another 30% in new notes, the remaining 50% would remain for 5 years in fixed deposit for 9% interest. So I said this would solve the problem. But when the Prime Minister sent my written proposals to Mr. Jaitley, he changed it from government taking away 20% to 50%. And he also said no interest will be paid on the deposits which are made by those who put the money. Now, when the bank employees are coming privately to you and saying, we will charge only 15%, why would somebody give 50%? Especially because you will have to declare your name as having deposited so much money, and you come on a register of the government, and here it is totally secret, and with chances of being intercepted or caught were very minimal. So that made a huge dent into our system. But the statistics were getting fudged. They changed the base year from 2004, 2004, the year 2004, financial year 2004 to 5 to somewhere in, I think, 2012, 13. And so, therefore, they got an artificially high growth rate. So they passed that off. There was a controversy on that. And then the question of on demonetization, they used what they call as informal sector estimates, which are usually based on sample surveys, but there were no sample surveys. So a linear projection was made of 2 years ago. And all kinds of frauds on the estimate of the GDP and its growth rate were made, and it came in the press. I'm sure you sitting in the United States must have seen all that. And but what was clear, and I was writing this in op-eds in Hindu newspaper from 2015 onwards, that we had begun declining, and that I said it was a tailspin, and that we will end up in a crash. And in the meantime, the banks, because of these high interest rates, began getting a lot of NPAs. So the banks were also getting into a crash. So by the time coronavirus came, we were already in a major economic crisis. And the crisis essentially came out of the demand side. People were not buying. Automobile showrooms were full of cars. Nobody was picking them. So these provisions, everything, the demand, because people, were being charged very high. The taxes were being increased. Two, the harassment was tremendous. And they tried to make out that, that we will be so stiff and strict that everybody will pay their taxes. Nothing of the kind happened, but only the people probably found more scientific ways of stashing away their money. And we began, our growth rate began to sink. It was in the 2014, 2015, we grew to 8%, and then every year it declined. And this last year, it was less than 5%. And now, I believe after the coronavirus thing has come, it is dropped to 0.5%, and probably it will be negative by the time we reach the financial year, end of the financial year in March 31st, 2021. So we have both a coronavirus-induced, collapse of the economy, and also an existing demand sector, lack of demand caused recession. And the two combinations are working side by side. And even if we solve the coronavirus problem, we are now saddled with double jeopardy, because the earlier demand, lack of demand caused crisis, and now we have a supply problem thanks to whatever the corona has done.
So Dr. Swamy, this is a wonderful grand sweep of the recent history of how we ended up in. But before we go to Corona, I want to ask a little bit more about the economy before the Corona. What was the state of two vulnerable sectors, particularly? One is the people who are self-employed, the unorganized sector.
MSME, we call them.
Yes, even smaller than the SMEs.
Yeah.
Even smaller than the small, medium industries.
Yes.
The street vendor, the taxi driver, the people who are self-employed, which I'm told is like 60-70% of Indian workers.
Right. Correct.
Second group is youth, because
Yes.
the youth unemployment has also been very, very high.
Yes.
So can you tell us what is the state of affairs before the corona of these two vulnerable groups, and why were they in bad shape?
Well, as far as the small, medium industries, before I come to the even smaller industries, they were hit by the high interest rates.
Okay.
And I had quite a hard time persuading the Prime Minister, and he ultimately was persuaded to send him home, which he did. And there was a uproar in the country. All the elites and the society ladies, they're cooing about him and abusing me for having got rid of him. But the fact is that he appears to have come with an agenda. He's some part of some organization in America, 40 people who are supposed to take charge of all the financial system of the world. But if he wanted to deliberately sabotage it, he did a terrific job. Now, what was the thing in these small? When you make, first of all, not only did we have high interest rates for giving loans, but the the interest rate on deposits was reduced to 6% from earlier 8%. And that meant that the savings of retired people, savings of people who are vendors and so on, who take their money and put it in fixed deposits to earn some more money, all these people were affected. And the fact that the middle class, because of the cut in the interest rate for the rate of return on their fixed deposits, the demand had started going down. And once the demand started going down, naturally they were all affected. The shopkeepers or the shops or the fellows sitting on the pavement and selling, all these people began to face the demand shortage problem. And so it was in a pathetic state. And I told you, the growth rate, which was 8%, was nothing for us after Narasimha Rao's period. And suddenly we were seeing 4%. Even that had some padding. So I think the sectors that you mentioned, unemployment went up largely because small and medium industries are folding up. 60% of the employment in the country of semi-skilled and some skilled is in these industries, and they were closed.
If I understand correctly, mismanagement at the top level in the government led to a crisis of credit because of high interest rates, and this affected the industry, including the small medium industry, and this led to a demand problem, and this demand problem then meant that the small street vendor and local vendors, the demand for their goods went down, and all of this created a worsening of the unemployment. So that's a kind of a nutshell of how one thing fed another.
Yeah. Only thing that you have used a gentle word called mismanagement. It is not mismanaged. It is lack of understanding of economics.
So now let's talk about, given that India was already in bad shape, so now we have this COVID-19 problem.
Yes.
There is, of course, the medical problem. People are losing lives and so on. But luckily and thankfully, India is done better than most other parts of the world. Yes. The second issue is the economic issue, because you can survive the virus, but then if you don't have jobs and there's hunger and unemployment created, then that's just as bad or maybe even worse in some cases, because instead of one person dying, there'll be 50 people out of work. So you also have a problem like that. So
yes,
will go down to a certain extent, and therefore it will affect exports, India's exports. Of course, the oil going down is a bonanza because India imports oil. We can buy cheap oil now. I wish India had a big storage capacity.
But we don't have storage capacity, one, and we are not driving cars anymore. Streets are all empty.
Yeah. See, in the US, there is a huge national oil reserve because they've taken the empty coal mines, empty coal mines, and turned them into containers, gigantic containers of millions of barrels worth, so they won't leak. And India has such a huge mining industry for hundreds of years that if India wanted, India could also have a very big storage capacity. So whenever there is an oil recession, you can just fill it up with reserve and save it for other time. But I think India does not have a storage capacity of that kind.
And because during Obama's time, the shale oil was being stored, so they had built up these capacities using abandoned mines and so on. We don't have many abandoned mines also because we still use a lot of coal. The issue is this, that what you have done, what has happened in these after this coronavirus came, is that factories have stopped producing, and people have stopped being employed, or they are not being paid their salary. So therefore, you have now a naked dance of demand and supply, squeezing our throat, or the economy's throat. So you have to get the production moving, and for that you have to induce people by giving them money, and it is what is they call as the stimulus factor, which Americans talk in huge amounts. During the period of Mr. Manmohan Singh and Pranab Mukherjee, the total stimulus amount was 4.5% of GDP. How much do you think that we have done in the last 2 months, or even before, if you took the previous financial year? Less than 1%.
Now is the time to do more.
What is the problem? You see, I'll give you another example. The bank, have you heard of something called the repo rate?
Yes, of course.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you have heard of the reverse repo rate also, when the banks deposit their surplus cash and earn interest from the Reserve Bank. That's called the reverse repo rate. Now, we had 60,000 before coronavirus, 60,000 crores of bank money lying in deposit with the Reserve Bank, for which Reserve Bank was paying them an interest. Now we have 7 lakh crore rupees in that account. Why? Because banks are not lending. Why they're not lending? Because they know that they may not be repaid, and then there'll be a commission inquiry on them. And so there's total risk averseness across the board, and this is what is going to take us tumbling down.
So a huge stimulus is needed.
Huge stimulus, at least, in my opinion,
10% of GDP.
Well, yeah, I don't mind. I mean, you see, people are still living in the gold standard. There's no gold standard. There's no bar for you printing as much as you want. You build a road, and those guys come and work, and you print notes and give it to them. How does it harm the economy? It actually boosts the demand. And people don't start buying.
But it will also create inflation. I mean, if you keep doing it too.
If you have excess supply, which you had, and now it's depleting because the inventory is now being drawn on. But cars, for example, they are just lying in the open sun, and so many other household appliances. You go across the board, those supply is still lying there, and there's no one to buy it.
So if you look at the US situation, and the India situation on the COVID-19 are different, because in the US situation, without this safe distancing and without shutting down the economy, things were getting so bad that right now there are 55,000 Americans who are dead, and 3 lakh have had it, accelerating rapidly. So drastic measures were needed, also like in Europe, for whatever reason, whether it's genetic, whether it's weather, whether it's because we've done good karma, or whatever the reason may be. India escaped that. So do you think that India taking similar drastic action at the cost of shutting down the economy was a wise trade-off, or do you think it was overdone and India could have kind of balanced this business about health, safety versus jobs at a different equilibrium than the Western countries? Because India did not have the same risk. If you believe that theory that India did not
even today, even today, community transfers of coronavirus is not taking place. And what are you so scared of? I will say these migrant laborers, the cruelest thing to do them is to send them home, because they'll have to live off somebody else there. They've come here because they had poverty at home. Now they don't, they have no place to stay. So the employers have taken away their place of stay. So now they're going to want to go home. Now, what is the difficulty in doing what the United States has done in spite of this huge problem? They have bought a stimulus package, which is $2 trillion now, you see. And I don't understand what is the difficulty in India doing the same thing, and especially when you got $7 trillion rupees in the bank, Reserve Bank of India, which you can borrow from. It's basically ignorance and time-passing method, psychology of our bureaucrats in the government.
So, assuming that India, having clamped down on the economy to save the health issues,
yes,
following the practices in other countries, also in the next few months, suppose in the next several weeks, decides to reopen the economy.
Yes.
Now the problem will be that all those 120 million migrant workers who've gone back to the villages are not going to come back overnight.
No,
they will need transportation. They will need transportation. They will need help. They'll need money. They'll need some incentives to bring them back.
They will find their way when it comes to question employment. But let me put some statistics for you. We have 739 districts. 300 have no coronavirus at all. Now, many of them, of course, for instance, Northeast was generally free. Now, then there are another 300, it is less than 7, 8, 9. I mean, less than 2. So, you can start new ventures, building roads, for the poor. Then another thing is the agriculture. We are going to have a crop.
Right.
Not my phone.
No. Okay, sorry about it. I thought it was off the phone.
Right. So I'm saying that you have basically 139 districts which are having serious problems with coronavirus.
Right.
What's stopping you from starting projects in all these other places?
It's a great idea. It's a great chance to build up the rural areas. The areas
if you can't say you have no money, you got 7 lakh crores lying in the Reserve Bank.
So all the money sitting and all these districts which are corona free and lots of poor people have gone home. Putting it all together, it's a no-brainer to start a big economic project over there.
Yes,
lot of development projects.
Building schools, building there. Building is one very, very effective way of employing these migrant laborers. Then for agriculture also, you can build in warehouses, packing houses, cold storages. You can build. There's plenty to do. This is what the Americans did in the Depression, if you remember.
Right. So basically, we have a case of extreme. Well, I'm calling it mismanagement, but it may be your words are even
Ignorance.
strong. Ignorance.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the leadership.
Yes.
PM Modi is a smart guy, but he doesn't have necessarily very smart cabinet ministers in all cases. So who is stopping? Bringing you into the cabinet, because previously maybe Jetli was a factor, then somebody else, but now all those are gone. Is there some secret hidden hand or some blockage or something that ought to come out more transparently?
You see, then the problem with me is that I'm also a politician, and not just a politician who lives off some other politician, be a camp follower of somebody there. I'm a politician who is directly in the masses, and it's not only Modi's fault, but Vajpayee was exactly the same way. And there are many others I know. Karunanidhi was the extreme in this. That is, don't allow competition. And everybody knows that I'm not a controllable person. I'm a good team player. I did it with Chandrasekhar. I did it with Morarji. I did it with Narasimha Rao. I did it with Rajiv Gandhi excellently. I mean, I got a lot of things done, including the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. I mean, I didn't get it done, but I encouraged him to do it, and he went along. And therefore, I can be a team player, but I can't be, I can't be a junior. So that's the problem. And I suppose if everything starts collapsing, maybe he will, overcome that and do it. And there are a lot of people to tell him. India is full of gossipers. They tell them all kinds of stories. I have no interest in actually in any, because I was brought up in politics with the lectures given to me were by Parmacharya, who told me, in your life, you will never get what you go strive for. But when you're required to have something, it'll come chasing you. And that's what has happened. I've been 6 times member of parliament, you see, without even spending a penny on my elections. Of course, 3 of them were Rajya Sabha, but nowadays they even spend for Rajya Sabha, many of them. But in Lok Sabha, I didn't spend any money of my own. And I won 3 times. I won 3 times, of course, I've been 3 times in Rajya Sabha. I've been a minister twice. And no, not a hint of anything. There are so many people after me with a microscope to find out if they can prosecute me for something, at least for retaliation for what I was doing to them. They haven't been able to find. So what do you want from me? And ideologically, today you can go to any part of India and ask them who is your true Hindu leader in this country. They'll take my name because of what I did for Ram Setu, what I did for Ram Mandir, etc. So I don't blame Modi for keeping me out, because I think he has to overcome this, that the way he runs the cabinet, I will be a misfit in that. Because the cabinet is mostly like a school principal.
Yeah, so it's not a meritocracy. I mean, that's the shame. That's the shame, because India is too large to be run in such a controlled way. Whether it's a dynasty by blood, a family dynasty, or whether it's some other kind of neta, where it's too much idolatry. Too much idolatry means that you don't hold somebody to task professionally for delivering what he's supposed to do, because you are blind, emotionally blind, and blind followers, blind worshipping. The new idols, the devatas are now politicians. So that I think is bad for the country. And you being an outspoken person based on merit, you want to hold people to task and ask honest questions. So I think one of the important takeaways, very concrete takeaways from our conversation can be, if I may summarize, is that India should do a very large stimulus package focusing on rural districts which have no coronavirus or very little, and focusing on creating jobs for the least, lowest strata of society who've been thrown out.
That's right.
Rather than necessarily top-down, big corporate stimulus, it should be bottom-up and help the masses. It will build the economy and we'll become stronger in 5-10 years with all this new infrastructure. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, absolutely. That will get the machine started. You see, that's all we need in this country. You see, get the machine started. People, moving around and getting a salary or a paycheck, and then going to shops. Indians have been always, even during the height of socialism, it was really the private sector which was doing the best and much better than the government. And so the Indians have this long tradition. They've been all over the world as sailors, as merchants, and so on. And we have produced all kinds of products in the past. You're a great, researcher on this. You have written path-breaking works on this thing, and so you know very well that we have been pioneers in so many scientific discoveries. So, we have had a network which reached all corners of the world. And so all you need to do is empower them. And empower them means give them a salary. That's, I'm talking the ordinary poor people. And that, you can't say, oh, it will be, where's the money, where's the budget, I'll have to increase taxes. Nonsense. You see, you are not living in the age of gold standard. You are living in the age of where currency has no standard. It's how much you print and how much you produce. If the money you give is ultimately going for production of output, then there cannot be an inflation.
Yeah, then it's okay. Yes. Excellent. So, Dr. Swamy, thank you so much. We've had a great conversation, but I think we've opened up so many issues that we need to continue. We'll have some more time in the future. But I think the message you've given is very clear, and I hope some of the people in the PM's office are also watching. And
that's the place where everything is. It's like a graveyard. Any good proposal goes, it will end up in the graveyard. He should begin by completely reconstituting his PMO.
Good thought. And with that, Dr. Swamy, namaste to you, and we'll be back and have some more conversations, I guess.
Okay, you're welcome.